That was a great time, and we're running back this year as well. That's what these teams are playing for, of course. Our OWCS finals are going to be in Stockholm once.
I thought you said they were playing for a good time.
I'm having a good time, Matt. That's all I care about.
Some of these teams near the bottom of relegation, they were playing for a good time.
Look, it's day 2. If we're not still having fun at this point, bro, like we need to think about what we're doing in our lives. You know what I mean?
I'm excited for both of these teams, right? It's awesome to see. Like, we did a little bit of Calling All Heroes. I think like not last year, maybe the year before, but awesome to see. Just Calling All Heroes representation across like all the OWCS, like in NA, right? A lot of great players kind of coming on through, making their names. Great to see rep on both sides. Ooh, look at this. So we got an Ashe Queen ban off the start. We have not seen Queen been played. We've not seen Queen, at least in the games that we've done, been banned. So that's a little bit of an interesting one thrown in for Shikigami.
Yeah, and I don't think this is necessarily targeted at Zeb.
No,
quietly. This is
that if they would have picked first, for instance, right? We don't have it here.
I am pretty sure
actually Rad first, so
I'm pretty sure I've seen Painkiller, obviously the other tank on this Rad lineup, play Junker Queen, but yeah, it's a protect ban. Don't worry about it. Okay, so these teams on paper, I think are actually pretty close together. Rad are, in my opinion, the most promising young team that we have in OWCS NA. There are a lot of them, right? Yeah. This team is kind of sick. King, by the way, has had experience for years at the top level. He played on the bloody Vancouver Titans. Let's not forget that. You know? Lep also had a stint on the Houston Outlaws. So we have players that really have been around for quite some time. This team only lost to one other team in Swiss. It was Timeless, and it was like a 2-1 in a best of 3. Outside of that, especially for their like qualifying games, they breezed through. They definitely deserve to be here. The Shikigami team, I think, is really solid as well, but they lost to Avidity and they had obviously there's a lower bracket, a second chance to qualify through our open qualifiers, and they did eventually make it. But I definitely favor Rad Esports as a lineup here. I think they're going to be very, very good. And Painkiller is in the lineup, so I guess there's an outside chance that the Queen was targeted. But
also, the Queen actually is the second ban, right? So Rad Esports, because they get mapped as for the first, they also get the first ban, right? So that's the Ashe gone, and then Shikigami the second ban, right? So potentially, we'll have to see how the series goes on, right? Though I think if somebody's good at a hero, right? I don't know if I'd like go and target and ban that right off the rip, right? Control is one that kind of like is really like back and forth, like ebb and flow of the game, right? You can kind of just play it close, especially like on Samoa with how some of these points can get contested. Feels like you would want to save it, especially for a situation where you get map pick and ban, right?
We were talking about it though, like it's such a often requested feature, Matt, and it's more often being used actually to protect heroes, not ban them. So it's just not technically being used. Really.
I also think that like people just haven't really figured out the best way to approach it yet, right? If somebody on the other team's really good at a certain hero, like do you target ban it first? Do you kind of wait? Like, how much do you want to play the advantages? I think there's still a lot to figure out with these teams, but it's Chronic gonna get that first kill here. Another kill there on Solo, just kind of dodge over the point with the Disruptor shot. So Rad Esports, a team like you mentioned, really excited to see what they can do. A team that, when you kind of look and you have all those teams that, maybe like that middle table, so to speak, in NA, this is a team that a lot of people think can play in that upper echelon.
Yeah, I think so. I think these, and like guys like this and Timeless are knocking on that exact door. I think they're really, really good. So far, a great start to the fight.
The door down yesterday. I mean,
that's right. That looks sick. I do think this could be a season for upsets. I think overall, like this region is less top heavy now with how Liquid has sort of changed in their composition and in their construction, and there's much more of that reliance on local talent than those import slots. So for me, that's even the playing field to a great degree. Rad here, though, looking very, very solid so far. Chronic, basically untouchable throughout so much of this game and has been dishing the deeps.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you mentioned that, right? Because for years, it's like, oh, well, this player is the best in this role in NA, right? But then you're also like, you have like a Korean main tank or a Korean like DPS player. It's like, okay, well, now that we kind of, everybody, right? I know for the most part, like not a large amount of imports in NA, like, okay, like let's kind of see like if we even, the odds a little bit, like where things stack out.
Yeah, I think that has kind of happened here, but Rad Esports, they continue to rush in this fight by Graveyard. They have the orbital ray and they just absolutely shellac Shikigami in this fight. And now Shikigami down to one more chance with a sound barrier ideally, but a mild stagger on Solo that puts him in a different spawn wave. So it will be last fight territory on this first round. And Rad have barely had to part with these ultimates.
And interesting for Shikigami to actually not play the Juno. We see Juno played Juno and Kriko like probably an equal amount. Lucio seems to be kind of all the time, and they probably play the Kiri because you're playing the double flanker DPS, right? You're playing Tracer Genji, but to just ditch the Sojourn that fast, right? Like, okay, we're not going to win this battle against Chronic. We need to put pressure on.
97 and counting, Matt. Shikigami need to put it together. Drunk to develop a blade might give them an opening here. Okay, it looks like we're just pinning Solo in place with that downpour. Lep does get caught out with the pulse bomb, and they weren't him over. That was just a nice stick there from Danny. King still repping the skins from yesteryear. I see him in that Titans livery. Has to deflect there because obviously 80 burst damage is not something he wants to deal with. Solo eventually does go down, but he's made so much space for Danny and Drunk to go to work.
You had to back out if you're Rad Esports, right? As soon as Lep dies at the hands of Danny with the pulse bomb. Fortunate for Rad Esports, you don't end up trying to use the sound barrier in that situation, but you back out. You have your own sound barrier to use with a blade combination, and you've already killed Drunk. So this is a huge advantage here.
Drunk here, also one of the few Chinese nationals, at least they identify as such, in the OWCS NA. Shikigami also have a South Korean player as well, a Rise, who's not in this match, but yeah, they've got a few options here. A lot of regions represented on their team. Right now, they're in North America, and they are getting taken to task here on this first round of Samoa. Chronic goes absolutely wild here. Again, another situation which the Sojourn player kind of runs away with the round.
Man, we've seen some sick Sojourn play in NA thus far, right? Last game, Winter, right? This game, Chronic, Chopper the other day. I mean, just some Seeker as well, like just some sick play from the Sojourn strat in North America. It seems to really be, because it's like the Sojourn's like the brunt of the burst damage, right? No, it's kind of like the tip of the spear of the burst damage, right? Like those railgun shots coming on in, and then the Hazard Genji causing chaos, just dashing through, just finishing players off. So when you have a player like Chronic playing this well, Rad Esports, they get that first round, makes it a lot tougher on Shikigami.
Absolutely, and they look really clean in this Hazard comp. I think like we're looking pretty closely at a lot of teams to see how they've managed to adapt to this setup, which is, arguably one of the strongest. They've also been playing, of course, this Kiriko now in this round, but we saw the Juno earlier on, an orbital ray against a Kitsune Rush, that they confidently won that particular fight in the first round.
Both teams going the Kiriga now.
Yeah, Z's switching over this time around. Again, you probably wall climb a little bit here, I think. King, no,
he's just minding his own business over there. Just gets absolutely deleted.
I mean, that combo is really powerful. That full burst damage, all cooldowns combo from Hazard can guarantee kills on those 200 HP heroes with great ease.
What's the poor guy supposed to do?
I mean, nothing. I mean, you ideally deflect. I think you can you can actually deflect the jagged wall projectile before it turns into a wall, which is kind of fun. Obviously, it's really hard to pull off, but there's not a lot of counterplay.
Just do that. Yeah, just deflect the wall and fight back. I mean, that's... that kill is crazy, being able to get King off the start, but it doesn't even result in the point, right?
No, I mean, the rest of Rad sort of dive in, they trade up, and crucially, they find Solo. They've been putting a lot of good pressure here down on the Hazard, and again, when you don't really have that spike guard available, look how squishy you are, and again, once again, I'm seeing a Kiriko getting killed by a Sojourn in the kill feed. That was both Rad Esports DPS just descending upon Graveyard's position, and she seems like the hottest commodity on this map to sort of dive in and pick off. That's classy stuff from Chronic, completely unperturbed, by the way.
This feels too easy, though. It feels too easy with the Sojourn in the mix. Like, I don't know if you can just drop the Sojourn and be fine with this type of composition. I mean, it's a lot to ask of your damage dealers, right? To kind of close the gap, put pressure on the opposite, team Sojourn, but then also your supports. Like, there's no threat, right, for Rad Esports of like those players getting bursted down at range, right? So they can play a little bit freer, where I know for Shikigami, Graveyard and Regime have to play so carefully.
Well, it's such a late switch to the Juno map that Graveyard might not have the chance to ult this game, especially if this Kitsune Rush gets converted. And look at the health bars on Shikigami's side. It is...
Ooh, that was the ult as well. You said right, Solo, like trying to jump, like at the ult in mid-jump.
That was a downfall. That's tough to see, honestly. Shikigami are running out of options. They never had a chance to dispense that sound barrier, and it will be, again, their final hope for Samoa. Can they get Regime in a position to put them in the upper hand in this next engagement. They're dealing with a beat from Lep as well. Chronic with an overclock. It's looking dire.
I mean, could you even use the hazard ult, right? To even prevent some of these players from coming on in. They actually use the hazard ult. Doesn't look like it connects with anything.
It's defensive though, so I think that's fine from Rad as long as they dissuade any dive onto the backline and create that space for Chronic, and he's using it to great effect. Regime gets picked off first. Chronic has no reason to move. King looks extremely comfortable out there, and that was a very one-sided Samoa here. Rad Esports again delivering, I think, on our expectations that this team is one to watch.
I just don't think you can not play the Sojourn. Like, the Ashe, I think that was banned by Rad early on here, first map, so maybe they thought there was going to be some Ashe play from Shikigami and playing some of the high ground here, but that Sojourn play from Chronic was sick, and I also think you just lose out so much on the damage, especially like in the tank battle, right? I know the Hazard's trying to get position and trying to jump on in, taking a railgun shot's like massive, right? Kind of changes the way you would even play and think.
I do think this composition is pushing teams more than ever to be extremely coordinated, right? Because there are some very glaring like weaknesses. It has like, I don't think that, Hazard is indomitable in terms of his survivability, right? There are windows in which he's really strong, but he can be exploited if you have the know-how. Solo is also having a real difficult time, Matt, getting past Painkiller into the backline. Like, he is struggling to dive Chronic, for example, right? Who's gonna be a target. But even when there's a Kiriko up and you're playing double dive DPS, this team is struggling to get into the backline and punish Z's for this pick. I mean, it's Tracer Genji. They cannot touch the Kiriko.
No, and I mean, if you're not going to be able to get to the backline and get the supports, and like the Sojourn's just like raining terror with the railguns and like overclocks, like you just have no chance of winning in that type of setup, right? So I think you have to play the Sojourn, or you have to ban it. Like, now potentially, right? You get your own ban first here for Shikigami. Maybe it's a ban of that Sojourn right off the rip, but that's only one map, right? You can only get it gone for one map, right? So it's not going to be forever. You're going to have to figure out a way to play against it.
Yeah, I guess you could ban the Sojourn. That would be very odd to see, I think, because a lot of teams sort of default to the Ashe, but not every Sojourn player has a strong Ashe. As far as I've noticed, some sort of lean more in like a Sojourn direction. I think like a good Seeker's a credible player, by the way, but I think he doesn't prefer to play the Ashe as much as like a Widow Sojourn. Like, he just has a slightly different bias as a hit scan DPS.
That's pretty high KD.
Yes. Yes. This is the problem. This is what I'm telling you. Like, there's zero backline pressure that Rad Avidity, that Rad Esports are having to deal with here.
And the damage doesn't look like it's that much different, right? But I mean, it's a significant bump in terms of healing and damage, right? For Rad, your healers are staying alive. Obviously, longer, you're going to do more HPS output, but just the damage, like, is that burst damage that results in some of those kills.
Absolutely. I don't know just how targetable a team like Rad Esports are, because even if you have a really good against a really good Hazard comp, it's like pretty hard to ban that out to such a point where you end up playing something else. Like, we've seen like Juno bans leveled. Okay, play Kiriko.
They just play Kiriko,
if the Kiriko is banned, right? A Lucio ban we're just not seeing. Sometimes we're seeing the bans used to dissuade a switch to like a Winston dive comp. But in general, like, I don't know how Winston is supposed to generate nearly the same levels of threat as a Hazard does.
Yeah.
Also, Winston's not good at intercepting enemy tanks. Like, he doesn't have the capacity to like displace them at all. So he just has to hope he dives better. And in some situations it works. Like last year we were seeing Winston comps brought back in out of nowhere to counter Wrecking Balls setups, right? Just dive better with your team. But yeah, I just don't think that's an option. And Numbani is the kind of map where like you can make an argument for it, especially now with Shikigami banning the Hazard.
See, right, but then on Rad they ban the Brig, right? So if you ban Hazard, you think you're going to play Winston, you would play on a Brig backline, but you see the Brig gone. So do we see like, I mean, on a Lucio potentially? Like, I don't know. I mean, how are you going to protect this Ana if that's the play?
So I mean, God, I'm thinking back to like the Virtus Pro team of last year. Like Gala and Kanale, who wanted to play Ana Kiriko like constantly.
Yeah.
But I do think that like you can't play an Ana backline without Brig. I just think it's a terrible idea.
But sometimes what do you think about on defense not playing the Ana at all and now playing Kiri Lucio?
I mean, it's much harder to catch Kiriko on her own, right?
Yeah.
That's for sure. Shikigami do want to play like a defensive Winston comp, but yeah, with the Lucio Kiriko. And you're also up against a Diva, who Painkiller has way more upfront burst damage, especially in like a tank 1 versus 1. Solo has to be really careful because there is no burst healing here at all. And there's no, you know, oh crack button to save your tank like a Nano would give you.
Yeah. I also think there's, you know, potentially like the Kiri pairs pretty nicely with the Diva as opposed to like I always kind of think like, you know, Winston pairs really well with the Ana, but for Kiriko, like the Kiri Diva like pairing is like typically pretty good as well.
Look at Solo's health bar. It's not changing. It's not moving. So if Solo doesn't have health, he can't create space. Like, you are literally trading your health for space. That's the transaction you engage in as a tank. And Solo cannot be brought above 30% health for so much of that fight. Yes. And the healers die at the end, right? It's not like there are no healers.
Yeah,
it's the DPS that end up dying first because the healers are too busy just desperately trying to patch Solo up.
they're the healers who are like, no, the DPS in ranked that are like, who are they healing? And the healers are just staring at the back of the tank like that's their entire game experience.
Yeah,
it feels probably what it's like there for Shikigami, where you just have to, because like Painkiller, right, can take this space using the defense matrix, like slowly like walk up, take some high ground, right? Like there's avenues to create space other than having your face pelted with bullets, right? And that's really kind of the only option for Solo.
Do you know what else is sick against the tank who is always at half health? Focusing beam.
Yeah.
Very good.
This is why they don't let me on trivia shows, because I'm too good.
That's it. I mean, you know, like you're so dominant in the Family Feud, you've carried that over here. Regime's actually the one that goes down to the focusing beam first here, but bro, I mean, Shikigami, just don't have a super durable setup here. Solo's been able to develop a primal rage here, but how do you really disrupt anyone with a primal rage here? Like, who is really going to be juggled? Who can be juggled?
He's not. It's just playing basically for the extra survivability that you can get potentially, right? Because the survivability, like, but even think about it, right?
So it's a self combo in the same sense.
Yeah, you would always combo like Nano, like with maybe a primal as King goes for a kill on Graveyard, trying to hide in the trees. Doesn't find it, but no, now both teams about even, right? You know, 4 players up on each side. Painkiller extremely low. You're not going to get the mech back. I mean, that's huge there for Shikigami. Like, you absolutely needed that kill.
That's really nicely changed. Danny does well. Painkiller is very, very low there. The bubble gets thrown down by Solo at just the right time to make it really hard for the Diva to do any work. So that's big. That's a huge stop, I think, dealing with that Diva. It takes a fair bit from Shikigami, but not in terms of ultimates. The Primal, I thought, gets pretty reasonable value in the end.
Yeah, it actually kind of did. You know, being able to get that D-Mech and then finish off that Diva, just push them back towards the spawn. That is huge to see if Drunk can actually get anything going, puts pressure on the back line. We talked about how important that was in map number 1. They didn't get it.
King, it's always a tough game against the Sojourn. Danny's been pretty good here. Gets the sound barrier applied to him as well, so now doesn't need to worry about any sort of lingering threats. Still 4 up for Rad. They've been able to get out of the limelight, so to speak, and return with a sound barrier of their own. Look at it, Chronic to have an impact. King as well, of course, has to play in such a way as to avoid Danny's scrutiny, which is tough on this phase of the map especially.
What do you think about Rad, though, playing the Echo? Like, Echo pairs pretty well with the Winston. Nice stick there from Chronic, but Chronic was so good on Sojourn in the first map. You'd hate to kind of take him off it. This is going to be Lep using a sound barrier. King cleans up the Ree, so this should be that second checkpoint for Rad Esports. And I know right there when I'm talking about, like, oh, would you like to have the Chronic on Sojourn? Doesn't really matter, right? You wipe the floor with them, but looks so good on it in round 1. They had no answer for it on the Shikigami side. Surprised they switched off of it.
I think it's really easy to bait like the Sojourn dash with Winston. And also, I think the Chronic would rather go and try and dive backlines instead of play shield shooting simulator against the Winston, right? There's like windows where like Sojourn is like turned off because she has to try and break through like that. I just think the Tracer probably gives you a bit more flexibility to ignore the Winston and try and hit the backline harder with your Diva comp. Here's King with a dupe, by the way, the Winston. This is pretty sick stuff. There's not much Shikigami can do, and there you go. That's how you juggle. Danny, nowhere to go back inside that spawn room, and just the pure level of disruption being inflicted here is tough to argue with. Pretty Graveyard, probably better off just not swift stepping there and allowing themselves to fall into the abyss.
Pretty clean primal from a damage deal. No, able to get, you know, the 2 there, just with the knock off the side as Danny's going to go over to Genji, so they drop the Sojourn yet again. This is pretty similar to what we saw in the last map, except in combination with a Hazard. This time, Winston, you have the primal. Kind of final fight territory here. This would be a brutal time bank to give up.
Solo keeping, okay, yeah, kept low so long. I think Solo just has no choice but to primal there, as it would have been the end of them. But still, again, it gets him a ton of value. Drunk, I think, able to beat Chronic is pretty massive. Solo hoping to get a DMAC here and really stagger out Painkiller as long as possible. That definitely is the plan. And it might come to fruition here as we'll probably see a DMAC on the high ground and Baby D left out in the open.
Yeah, Painkiller's going to have to jump off the side, so you're going to lose some clock here for Rad Esports. Still a decent time bank potential, though. For them, it'll be sound barriers to match coming into the next fight. No threat of a blade either for Shikigami, so see if Rad decides to go aggressive with that beat, maybe hold on to it. Then also Chronic with the whole spot. Landed a good one in the previous fight, ended up resulting in a kill, allowing them to get the second checkpoint. Potentially trying to do it again, although it's going to be a lot harder to access the backline.
Chronic v Drunk as well. It's been a bit of a battle that's played out extensively over this. Oh my goodness, that is dirty. Drunk there, here with the old one clip. A humbling moment for Shikigami's Tracer player. And now the Kitsune Rush, Rad Esports go for the throat. Swift Step has to be used there by the Kiriko, and Graveyard benefits from the sound barrier just in time, but Rad Esports, I mean, the blood is in the water and they are absolutely going for the jugular. There's the Dream out of the picture now. I think Danny's slinking around, yeah, over there. Tried to dash onto the cart, but that'll be it. Rad Esports, a minute 23 left in the round.
Yeah, good time bank there for Rad Esports. Really not a ton of defense from Shikigami. So we'll see now with Rad on defense. Man, they have looked so strong today. Like, can they put together a first point hold, right? Really start to make this a little bit of a statement game in terms of where they rank amongst all the teams in North America.
And the Diva composition has done pretty well, I think, at, you know, handling Solo, handling the Winston. Obviously, she has that capacity to turn around and peel a little bit better than Winston can because she has inherent disruption and nice burst up close. But again, every time there's a primal rage, Rad didn't have a great answer to it. You know, as soon as, you know, the cooldowns were burst by King and Solo realized they would die to a focusing beam, they hit that primal and they start to go for it. So I will say, King, like you mentioned, pretty clean on the Winston dupe there. That's one of the, you know, a huge boon that Echo gives you outside of that ability just to nuke targets is to, yeah, get a 300 HP tank and build a primal very easily.
Yeah, you know, typically we see some of the primals from the damage dealers, and they don't really resemble a tank, right? But you know, King that time, right? He was able to like knock Danny into a corner in the spawn, kill him, then kind of go around the opposite way, knock, I believe it was Graveyard off the side. So some sick plays there.
All right, bit of time to work with here for Rad. They are going to kick this Diva composition on defense. Let's see what Shikigami can do. Still no Sojourn for Rad. Again, which is like, it would be pretty reasonable, right? To see someone take it. King, there's clearly the belief that this Echo, threatening as it is to Winston, is a better answer than the Soj. Even defensively, which to me is interesting. Let's see how it plays out though. Struck, of course, really dispenses with any idea of stealth as they try to wrap around. Chronic having just one clipped him at the end of that last round. I'm quite sure Drunk has a score to settle here. Chronic's more than happy to throw down again.
Yeah, just put some pressure on the Drunk, right? Just pushes them all the way out. I believe Lep was there to help Chronic as well, just trying to check, make sure not coming on a flank. He actually hears that blink, right? So yeah, he hears the blink and they'll chase. Yeah, that's 3 blinks, potentially even looking at a recall, but they know that you're not really going to play aggressive there for Drunk, right? You use all 3 blinks, you've, you know, gone down to the low ground. It's going to be a while before you see him back in the action.
You see how important shutting down those Tracer flank ankles is. Yeah, the bubble's pretty annoying for King to get through, but eventually that one comes crumbling down and there's just not enough DPS here to back the rest of Shikigami up. So they've lost over a minute here, just trying to posture for that coast control. And this will be dragged out a bit more now with Z's just randomly kunaiing Drunk.
Yeah, as see now Shikigami can get another push here on offense. Maybe they're going to continue the same type of way, right? I know maybe see Drunk tries to take some of that high ground control, like wrap around the stairs, but the Diva playing on the opposite side, right? Typically you'd see kind of you know, in a Winston shell, for instance, right? The Winston on the side, you know, opposite here from Painkiller, and then the Ana set up here, but everybody's set up on this side. It's actually going to be a self-destruct use here, just so Painkiller can get the mech back, stay alive.
Drunk's down, loses another Tracer 1 versus 1, but King has been removed by the Sojourn, who's definitely the natural predator for the Echo here. But it's Chronic, still having a big impact on the game. Not only does he get rid of the Tracer, but both backliners. And now that attacking time for Shikigami's been cut in half, Solo also doesn't really have anywhere to go except over the edge.
And that's the Kitsune rush from both sides, right? I know Z's and Graveyard both use it. Graveyard a little bit more aggressively, right? Then they try and go for the high ground. They do get Painkiller, but the mech get right back with that D-mech and self-destruct combo. We'll see what they decide to do with the sound barriers here. Is Shikigami trying to set something up? Potentially now just ditching the high ground altogether.
Okay, good pressure on Z's here. They have to Suzu themselves, but then, yeah, swift step back to the rest of their team. Forces the dive to reset, and oh, the beat comes out. Now, Z's doesn't benefit from it, but it doesn't matter because Regime is down. They die with their beat. Please kill the Kiriko. Please kill the Kiriko. Another Suzu. Oh, that is so frustrating for Solo.
Man, that's tough.
I think there's a disconnect there, though, because the rest of Shikigami is still in main.
And you get the kill on the Drunk here. It just doesn't seem like they're able to coordinate this dive really at all, right? Like between like Solo on the Winston and then Drunk on the Tracer, like they're never really able to collapse on the targets. It seems like they're really disjointed. And now we see a Zarya. So we've seen the Zarya banned a few times. We actually haven't seen it selected, but now with a strong Diva comp on the other side, they're going to be using this Zarya to try and break through.
Okay. You just circumvent the Zarya, I think, most of the time, but this overclock here might be the difference maker. King already picked off. Obviously, it's pretty scary for Painkiller to have to try and answer this. And the Kitsune Rush is half-heartedly employed, at least, to try and, for Rad to try and end the game here. That's not to be. Z's ends up going down to what was a Ren. Oh, I see. Z's swift steps, I think, to that player and gets right-clicked down by Solo. So the Zarya switch gives them the results, standing on the Sombra as well.
But no, the time bank is so good for Rad Esports. If you're Rad Esports, constantly take fights, like push all the way up, constantly take as many fights as you possibly can here. Just keep dragging out the clock. Painkiller's mech is getting deleted though by that Zarya, so I wonder if we'll have to see a switch of the Diva here shortly. But Shikigami gonna have to make up some time, man. Minute 23 in the time bank for Rad Esports. You're gonna be pretty much flawless from here on out.
Absolutely, and Solo just doesn't have enough healing. There's a big question about whether this Kiriko Lucio setup is really equipped to give Zarya what she needs, right? We saw her like in like a Baptiste ultimates, like really high healing throughput with like immortality frames that maybe last longer than just a Suzu. Because once the shields come down for Zarya, she's normally surrounded by foes.
Yeah, Lep already with a beat here too, right? You can play quite aggressively. I think that Shikigami may not suspect that they have beat in Kitsune pretty close to being back on the menu, so this is good for Rad Esports. Any type of stopping of the payload, like it seems like Shikigami, they need to be hyper aggressive here to try and make up some clock.
Painkiller now, the role for them has to change because no longer are they actually tasked with fighting the enemy main tank. I think they want to try and avoid Solo, unless their shields are down. Oh my goodness. That's the burst damage. That's the problem. And no amount of the Kiriko Lucio healing is going to protect your frontliner from that.
Now, once the bubbles are gone, right, the Diva can kind of go in, put down some damage, and then the King over the top with the beam. I mean, the Zarya just no chance of survival.
All right, grab available here. Solo throws it out, saying, folks, don't yeet it into the Diva. Okay, or we just die.
Well, I mean, you just die to the Diva.
Yeah.
What do you think about Graveyard switching over and playing the Juno here in combination with some of this? So they ditch the Kiri. You're not going to play for the Kitsune Rush. Play a little bit more, stable on the ground, right? With the potentially that orbital ray, right? With that Zarya.
I think it's more dangerous against a cop that's diving you. There's a grab onto the wall. Okay, sound barrier there for Lep, though, the prescribed response, and it's good. Gets him through that Zarya ultimate. And Solo spent much time charging up. They are at 100 charge right now, which is pretty critical. But again, it's Danny's overclock that has to give them the edge in this fight. But 15 seconds are left in the round, and they've lost it Drunk. So now Chronic starts to lick his lips and look at the back line of Shikigami, Graveyard, and Regime are the ones that are going to be in the firing line here. Self-destruct, but Zarya doesn't have the mobility to chase that. So it will be a free remake here for Painkiller. And this has just been staggered out.
But it's brutal because you have to use all these ultimates to get out of your spawn if you're Shikigami. You go into OT, and then you're going to have a dupe plus Kitsune Rush on the other side. We'll see who King goes for.
Oh, that is. Who do you copy? I think he copies Aya anyway. The bubbles are too good. Bubbles are so good for your diva as well.
Bubbles for your diva, yeah.
Yep. We have Azaya duped here. Painkiller does eventually lose the mech now. King not exactly charged up, but some bubble value there. And another one in hand. King goes and finds Solo. And a grab, I think, from the dupe Zaya would end things here. You are just grabbing your opponents off the card. Elsewhere, though, Graveyard gets rid of Painkiller. There's actually a push. Oh, the Orbital Ray is going to be there. There's no timeout before King gets a touch. Here comes Lep. Graveyard disintegrates under that level of pressure. And there's nothing Drunk can do now without a cooldown for recall available. That's the map, folks. Rad Esports with another convincing showing, this time on Numbani.
Yeah, and it's a different showing for Rad Esports, right? They're able to play a diva composition, right? Chronic doesn't play the Sojourn. King on the Echo looked really strong. So that's what's impressive for me about Rad, right? It's not just these hazard comps that we saw in map number 1. It's clear that they have other things they can go to that are equally as good.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, despite there being like some bans aimed at the backlines, right? I don't think that seemed to have a huge impact over the game. There were plenty of teams who aren't bothering to bring Hazard on to Numbani whatsoever. Again, because it is like the extreme of long sight lines and pretty light.
Or like, you know, if there's an Ana in this, do you think it goes like differently? Like, I think it would be hard to argue it would, right?
No way.
With the bans that came through, right?
It's just so diveable. And without a brig, like, you just pack it up. Like, what?
Oh, I'm saying, let's say on a brig. Let's say Ana Brig was on the, you know, in the game, right? I don't think you can say like, oh, that alone would have just turned the tides. You know, it seems like it's a little bit larger than that.
Absolutely, but I have to point I have to ask the question about, you know, you want to play like the Winston based comp with like Lucio Kiriko. It is really difficult. That is so hard, man. I don't know what you're supposed to do, especially against a tank who's like actively hostile to you and beats you in the straight head to head. You know, I think Shikigami got themselves in a pretty bad position. So I like that from Rad. Maybe they read this. Maybe they realized Shikigami, hey, they want to probably play Winston dive. They're going to do it even if we ban the brick. And so they did. That prediction paid off.
Shikigami also, we should probably note, had a really difficult road to even get here, right? They end up losing in like the round 1 to Avidity, so they have to kind of play through some of the loser bracket. And they have to just run the table, right? All the way through. So, no, it's not a team that like kind of clear ran through the top of the, you know, a winner bracket, right? You know, got a great bracket, kind of cruised on through. This is a team that like, you know, forged by fire there in the loser bracket for a long time, right? So now battling back through some of those, getting up to this level, and you know, they're running into Rad Esports, which we thought would be a very good team, and it looks like they're going to be a powerhouse here.
Yeah, suffice to say, they're going to give Shikigami more trouble than the ASU Sun Devils. I think this Rad team is like
most likely
very good. Yeah, very,
I haven't
very
seen
good.
the ASU Sun Devils, but you know,
Angelic's on that roster. They almost qualified again. Like that was a 3-1. Shikigami won that. So yeah, there will be a factor, I think, this year in future open qualifiers. But look, I think pretty simply, like Rad are definitely the stronger team. So now it's up to Shikigami to ask themselves, we have one map pick, left. I don't feel like Rad are bannable. I don't think you can really punish them with that. I do think bans get way more relevant when teams are on like fundamental parity but have different styles. That's when it gets like really exciting. Here, I think like you might try and just give yourself the best comp, the best chance of winning, and your map, like the best map. I think that's going to be really important.
But what would you want to pick here? I mean, you're looking like now, I was just thinking like the push maps, right? Like Esperanza, probably no. Coliseo's really good for like no Sojourn, right? Like clearly map 1 with the way that went. You might not want to go revisit that. Oh, okay. It's a C6. Okay. Yeah, so you can play like so it'll actually be the Lucio ban. So a Lucio ban, and then they ban. That is an interesting one. It's like, hey, we've been. Are they trying to save them from themselves?
No,
so to
I mean
speak?
Shikigami are still trying to force Ana Brig because they banned the Lucio this time. Like they're still trying to get that, but it's been read by Rad. They're like,
but then there's a Winston.
Winston. So you can play Diva in the dive shell, right? With the Ana Brig, you do that. Yeah, I do think Lucio is pretty important in this map. Yeah, so here you go. Okay, so Hazard in... This is really interesting. Hazard in the Ana Brig shell with a Widow for Danny.
Yeah, so we'll see Rad Esports here on defense. It doesn't really, I mean, look, Lucio goes out, they just put the Brig in, right? They're gonna keep it with the Juno, so
Bring Juno.
yeah, so they'll actually go bring Juno on the other side as well. I think Danny probably switches here, probably. Okay, so they're gonna go Genji, so they really don't want to play. You know, when Chronic has played the Sojourn, they have gone really in a position to play total dive. But like, I don't think like Brig doesn't necessarily fit this though, right? Like Brig is definitely more of a protector for the Juno here, right? But doesn't exactly like you get more value out of the Brig if you have the Sojourn as well, right?
Exactly.
You know, like play around
Protect
both.
the
like,
Sojourn.
Yeah.
Here it's like I don't quite know who Graveyard is trying to cover for here. Juno might have to play in a slightly different way for Shikigami. Maybe actually like make the Brig sort of more relevant. Right here, they're looking pretty comfortable. I think the Sojourn is going to get dived very heavily. That's obviously the main target here in lieu of... Well, the Brig, like sometimes you just focus the Brig down to start these fights. Chronic, though, clearly has a lot of room to breathe. Shikigami have managed to shift the card up somewhat, but King's in their backline now, and that Juno's in a lot of trouble, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you're protecting Regime that type of position, right? The Brig not really close, even if they were. I mean, well, you're going to use all the health packs on it, but Danny comes up with 2, so starting to make an impact here on the Genji.
Chronic rotates back to Big Earls and not towards the defenders.
Look at that. I mean, the Brig there from Lep stands strong, somehow able to live through all that. I believe you have Z's there as well, so even with Danny coming up with like 2-3 hills there, still not enough.
You've got to think that Shikigami were really hoping to get to play some Winston this map. Still, I guess like the core tenets are the same. They want to play this really all-in dive style. As Regime picked off, King goes down for his sins, but getting rid of the enemy Juno seems pretty good when, again, Shikigami wants to be using the hazard as a blunt object. Solo, though, it's knocked for 6, and once more, Shikigami have to regroup. They've lost half their time bank already.
It'd be interesting, like, to see what Shikigami looks like if they're able to play like a Winston with an Ana in the combination. Clearly seems like, at least like from what the map selection and ban, like they're kind of trying to do, right? Just not able to do it throughout this series. I mean, Rad Esports kind of read them like a book.
Yeah, they knew what they were walking into. Make no mistake. And it only takes one ban. You ban the Brig or you ban the Winston. You just ban one of the pivotal parts of that composition, right? And you make it unplayable.
This is one of the, it seems to be like, you know, for Rad Esports, one of the better teams we've actually seen like target ban, right? Like have a good idea, read of like what the opponent wants to do and like how you're going to approach getting rid of it, right? It seems like they've done a really nice job throughout this series.
I do think that like sometimes the map that gets picked is a huge tell as well. Like when you see a team like try and actively pick like Numbani and Route 66, you know,
Owen Dorado, what do you think?
Right. Like you can tell they have a real proclivity for trying to play those dive styles. So, you know, you have screaming. Surely these teams are screaming each other on like a somewhat regular basis, given like where they stand. So, yeah, I mean, Rad Esports here reading like a book. Shikigami down to 45 seconds, and again, no more map picks after this. That's going to be booted out of the series. Not the auspicious start to OWCS here in 2025 that Shikigami were hoping for. Danny's going to try for a blade and does catch Painkiller. There's more damage than the Hazard expects to be in the front line, and the rally clearly dissuades King from going for any more. Shikigami are going to get through here, battered and broken as they are. They look like they'll have this checkpoint.
Well, Chronic hits 1. I don't think, because you don't have the Lucio, I don't know if there's not enough speed to actually make it back. So no rally available for Rad Esports, no Orbital Raid, Danny with a blade on the other side, and just no response. So Shikigami finally break through. Graveyard's gonna play Ana. So Ana Juno, a combination we haven't really seen so far. Typically when we see Ana, we've seen it in combo with a Brig, so this will be a different look.
Again, I'm betting that VP last year tried it. The refusal to play like Lucio and Juno comps at the beginning was funny. Danny's down though. Again, I think it supports the Genji to a greater degree, but just because you're attacking doesn't mean you're any safer. I think with this Ana, you have to play from a really obvious spot, and it's very easy to push Ana out of line of sight, even if you're not trying to kill her, Matt. That's what Painkiller's doing. He's like, all right, I wonder how much I crater Shikigami's healing output by just threatening the Ana for a second here.
And also, how much pressure do I have to put on the Ana for them to react? You see, they're just a leap, and then Graveyard is forced to kind of run around the corner.
I mean, this you sack the Ana in this comp. You basically say, okay, well, good luck, Graveyard. If you can see us, shoot us.
Live for as long as you can.
Yeah, 100%. And again, the hope is that it takes resources away from Rad such that Shikigami can out-muscle them. But Rad also aren't full committing onto Graveyard. They do now late in the fight when it suits them.
Well, also at some point, right, with your team dying and seeing the health bars dwindle, like Graveyard has to come out, right? Graveyard has to come out and fight. So even putting this pressure and backing Graveyard up to positions where you don't have like line of sight of the rest of the team, eventually, right? Painkiller just kind of like the same, song and dance over and over. Painkiller jumping up, Graveyard running away. Eventually, you're going to see your teammates start to die around the corner. You have to just stand there and kind of commit for Graveyard, which ultimately result in death.
Just quietly. Shout out to Connor, the voice actor for Hazard. He's got some serious vocal range, bro.
Dude,
I don't know if he's built like that. The death scream when you fall down is like crazy high pitched, man.
He was trying to convince them that I should become a hero, which I obviously agreed with. But it doesn't sound like there was much buy-in from anybody else in the room.
To be fair, I do think we probably have space for like the white collar criminal in Overwatch, like the Mr.
I thought you were gonna say like an Italian, dude. We don't have like an Italian mob hero.
Oh, do we not have an Italian? That is so true. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, we might have an Italian hero. I just don't know.
Come on, bro. Oh dear. Here it is, King. Found Graveyard. Solo got nanoed, so he's being studiously ignored by everybody on Rad Esports, and frankly, it's working pretty well. He also gets caught in the downpour. Painkiller makes sure to hold him in place here, and this has been a systematic deconstruction.
Yeah.
Like a weird French-Vietnamese fusion meal at a double Michelin-style restaurant. Shikigami are in pieces.
I feel a little bit bad for Shikigami because I feel like there are moments, right, where they're able to like obviously win fights, get things going. But it also feels like they never really kind of got a chance to play what they would have liked to play throughout this series, which, I mean, look, that's Rad Esports doing a good job in terms of like using the ban system to their advantage, right? But also feels a little bit like we don't really, this series, we don't really know like a lot about Shikigami coming out of it. Like they've had some moments against Rad. We think Rad's going to be very good, but it'll be interesting to see against other teams what Shikigami's, can do. But I also think now this puts out a little bit of a playbook, right? About like, hey, when you play Shikigami, this is exactly what they're trying to do. Like if you go with these bans, you can rattle them a bit.
And obviously, it's a long quote unquote stage for Shikigami of opportunities to test themselves against so many of these different teams. I do kind of want to know what Arise is up to. That's a play that we don't know nearly as much about, but I think they're at ISU right now. So in theory, they are like a Sojourn player. They've got a pretty nice hero pool apparently, like Ashe, Sojourns, some of those like even less like go-to hit scan DPS right now, because Danny Souls as they've looked, Shikigami like are trying to force like a Genji Tracer sometimes, and I definitely feel like they lose out to Chronic when it comes to that Sojourn impact.
I mean, Chronic has also been sick on the Sojourn. It's like not like, oh well, they picked Sojourn and the other team didn't, and like they're kind of like just being able to use that hero more effectively. Like Chronic's also been hitting some crazy shots, right? So I mean, you're going up against a hero that's extremely strong in the meta right now, also piloted by somebody who's on a heater.
Yeah. Chronic here, just nothing overly aggressive, no sliding forwards here, just wrapping around the corner and keeping that consistent pressure down. Sleep Dart from Graveyard, unfortunately, just has no impact on Painkiller. It's on the wrong side of the Big Earl side, and there goes Drunk. Chronic gets rid of the Genji. Still, though, nice little crackback from Shikigami, I've got to say. So a big part of that is getting rid of this Juno in the Rad Esports setup. And when so much of the fight matters happening up in the air, like, what is the Brig doing? Yeah. It's so hard for Lev to get involved.
Well, Solo has to actually go back and try and protect his supports, right? King doing work on the Genji, going after Graveyard and Regime. Like, there's no help, right? You're not playing the Brig in this setup now for Shikigami. You've committed to playing the Ana with the Juno, so you have to have, your Hazard go back and play kind of defense, so to speak, where you would love to have the Hazard putting pressure on the other team's backline.
Oh, that was good. Oh, no! Go home, you drunk. That was brutal. Hit with a whip shot. Trying to dive on towards Lep, of course, and again, that's what the Brig can offer you in this setup. Shikigami opts or prefer not to play it. Unfortunately,
The range on that is wild as well. I mean, when we see Graveyard get taken out there by Painkiller, I mean, it looks like Painkiller's ages away about the swing.
No, yes, it looks like
a wide range to it.
It looks like one of them laser swords from Halo. Like, it's literally, like, it's big. And you can see it only in third person, just how long the range is. I can't believe
you disrespected the energy sword, calling it the light
energy sword. Sorry. I'm more of an Overwatch guy.
That's insane to me. I don't know. I get my information from J3, so I was like, he told me it's the energy sword, so.
That guy. Oh, man. His blade looks a pretty good one as well. Disrupt the shot thrown down to force King back, but he's happy to get these cooldowns out. Regime has to go for an orbital rake here, and, well, it passes by pretty inconspicuously, I'll say.
Who's the nano for here? Is it potentially for, I mean, you kind of have to use it on solo, right?
Solo.
It feels like that's going to be, yeah.
We saw it last time, right? Okay. Spike guard used here. Chronic freshened a little bit, but saves the dash cooldown to get away. Downpour available for Painkiller. Can he trap in one on the high ground? Yes, Danny is sat still. Painkiller able to go up there and just eviscerate him. And Chronic is charged up, ready to rumble. Regime with nowhere to go. Graveyard soon follows. Rad Esports are the real deal, folks. They're here to stay. And they got a roster to fear. A solid 3-0 against Shikigami.
That was a nice try from Graveyard. I don't know if you caught it, but they ended up nanoing Danny with the overclock when he was stuck inside of the hazard ult, just trying to keep the Sojourn alive after getting a kill up on the high ground, but just too much from Rad Esports in the end.
Yeah, I mean, very early on in the series on Samoa, I was like, okay, maybe it was a bit of a comp diff, like whatever, but then it started to get a little dicey there. There was just no pressure. Yeah, I mean, it was a comp diff, but then I was like, surely if they make the switches accordingly, then it might look different. Narrator's voice, it did not. But still, there's some stuff to discuss here. I mostly just am very, very impressed, of course, with the winners taking this away. Chronic and King looked so clean. Chronic on that Sojourn especially, like, he was running away with things.
Yeah. This is kind of why I said yesterday I was excited to see Rad play, because I felt like I use the term ponied up, right, which we had a discussion about, but it feels like they have really, like they're making this like, really young, talented roster of players that haven't really reached the highest of heights here, but are probably like the next up, I think, in NA.
Good sir, no disrespect on King. He's been in the league.
Yes, but again, Vancouver Titans roster was loved, but not. No, sorry, they weren't good. They were pretty trash, but they were loved, right? But the King has.
They were in our Overwatch league. They were in the relegation that happened in our brains. They were not. They didn't have relegation, but
yeah, I mean, again, one word: breadsticks, right? Like they're the breadsticks guys. That's all I need to say. But here, I think it's a different story. They can be serious.
The people age. That's what's important.
They can create their own reputation from scratch, Zoe. I think that's the best.
They can. Yeah, no, it's just on the other side there, they're like, what do you take away here if you're Shikigami?
I think they need to work on things that are, not. It seems like they really wanted to play like that Winston almost kind of dive comp. They play a lot of the Genji Tracer throughout this. You're gonna have to play some Hazard. You're gonna have to figure out the Sojourn type of component to it. So I think some of those things you're gonna have to look at, because a lot of teams, in this league now are gonna be able to look at what Rad Esports did in terms of the bans and be able to do pretty similar stuff, right? So you're gonna have to play it, or you're gonna kind of get punished for it. So it seems like they'll have to adjust.
I don't think any quality team should be hamstrung by any hero ban. I think you have to be agnostic to that. And that's so much of the conversation about how teams were built coming into this year. Like interviews, for example, with Caceres was like, yeah, we want to make our team as like unbannable. That's exactly what the Timeless guys said in the interview yesterday. Like, we're unbannable. That's why we're so good. I just don't think at this level you can afford to be a team that is actually affected negatively by any hero ban across the board. They've got to shore that up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the teams showed that even if they themselves are banning their best heroes, they still manage to win it out because they have more than that in their pocket. Now, Chronic, of course, looking good on that Sojourn, but doesn't have to be on that Sojourn. We know he has a lot of depth in his hero pool as well, so he can easily flex over to other DPS heroes as well and just make it work for the team, which looked very cohesive.
The Sojourn was really good. The Tracer, when needed on Numbani was also extremely effective, right? We saw a lot of times, being able to take out Drunk in some of these duels. So just a really good overall showing from Chronic. And like we kind of discussed, like we know King can play a lot of different heroes. We've seen it in the past. In the Overwatch League, we've seen him like last year at times. So to see him paired with a damage dealer, it looks like one of the better rising young players. It's cool to see.
Absolutely. And we actually have King now standing by for an interview. What are you laughing about? Didn't have a better transition? Is that it?
No, yeah, Match is
okay.
rude.
All good,
Match is
all good.
rude. He's rude.
He's just rude. You know who's not rude? King is not rude. That's right. That was my transition. We're running with it. King, thank you so much for joining us for a quick chat. First of all, of course, congratulations on the W. You guys made this look easy. I want to chat a little bit about hero bans with you because, quite frankly, it looked fairly targeted and it really shook up Shikigami's approach there. Who's making the calls there on what to ban? Are you coming in with a playbook? Is it more just on the fly? And who's having the final say?
Honestly, I think it's like our coaching team. If anything, I'm the last person with bans, but I think it's like a team thing. Like with scrims and stuff, I usually just let them do their thing. But yeah, I'm out of the loop in bans, but it's all my team.
And you guys looked incredible today. A lot of like hype around you guys in North America right now. And I'm sure you've scrimmed all the other teams. Where do you think you guys kind of rank in terms of the standings? That we don't see, right? In terms of scrim standings, you guys kind of talking amongst yourselves. Where do you guys think you rank amongst teams in NA?
Ooh, I will say it's pretty different on day to day, but I will say like I'll give the scoop, but maybe like top 2 on like good day, maybe like top 3, like top 2 for sure. But we still have to iron stuff out. Yeah, we just have to iron it out, and we could definitely show people like we can make some upsets.
Okay, so if you're thinking you guys are in a top 2 team, you're also thinking about like the future and actually getting out to some of these international events and taking on the rest of the world. How do you kind of feel like NA this year stacks up? Because one thing that everyone's really boasting about in NA is like sick, unproven young talent, but the global landscape of Overwatch has changed a lot. You guys go out to an international event. How do you think NA performs in general?
If I'm being honest, like I think NA is like pretty competitive like this year. Like I think like every team, like if you look like one by one, like it's really competitive. So like the top 2 teams are like going to be like really strong versus like other teams for sure.
Well, with today's performance, you and the team definitely showed that you came to play. We can't wait to see more of what you guys have in store for us. Thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck in your next match.
All right, thank you.